there. Are we all here now?
I think so.
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Michelle. I think we've got about 10 people in here now,
Okay.
and we're expecting 20-ish, so we'll see what happens. Okay. Hi, I'm Michelle Bailey-Keahey, and I'm with Central Arkansas Library System, and I'm here with Alisha Rai and Lyssa Kay Adams. Alisha is the author of Girl Gone Viral, which is her second book in the Modern Love series. And then, excuse me, Lyssa Kay's book is Undercover Romance, the most recent one, and it's also the second in the Romance Book Club series. And you've got a third one coming out next week.
October 27th, so a couple of weeks. Yep.
Okay, great. I want to ask, excuse me, I'm going to give you both a chance to tell me about your book and the funniest part of what we all need to know about it. So, Alisha, I'm going to start with you first. Alisha, I'm going to get it right at some point.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So, Alisha, tell us about your book and the series in general and what we need to know about it.
Sure. So the series is the Modern Love series, and it follows 3 roommates. They're all sort of in the tech industry in one way or another. And the first book, The Right Swipe, the heroine in that book was a dating app creator. And in the second book, Girl Gone Viral, she is an angel investor. And basically what happens is she goes viral in an unfortunate way. She is just in a coffee shop minding her own business. Cute guy sits next to her. Somebody else sort of live tweets it like it's a date. And then suddenly everybody on the internet is on the hunt for this girl. So she deals with a lot of PTSD, anxiety. And so it's like the worst thing in the world for her. So luckily she happens to have a handsome bodyguard and he whisks her away. So he whisks her away to his family farm. And, you know, as we should all have, handsome bodyguard, it whisks us away somewhere. And, you know, then sort of forced proximity works its magic.
Okay. Lyssa Kay, tell us about Undercover Romance.
Yeah, so it is also the second book in my series. The Romance Book Club is a series about a group of men in Nashville who have a secret book club in which they read romance novels to learn how to be better. They read them in secret to learn how to be better partners, better lovers, better friends, and just better people. They call them the manuals. And so in the second book, it's about one of the guy who actually founded the book club, and he is teaming up with a character who appears in the first book, and she is trying to expose and bring down her boss, who's a celebrity chef, when she finds out and catches him sexually harassing a young hostess at the restaurant where she works for him. And so the whole book club gets in on it, trying to expose this guy. And of course, in the process, it's what we call an enemies to lovers trope. They don't actually like each other at first all that much, but yeah, the working together like that, again, you put it perfectly, Alisha, works its magic. And of course, it is a romance. So so that's the second one. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, so the first one in your series, there are a couple of things that I really enjoyed. Was first of all the Romance Book Club. I love that the men had a book club together and that they called them manuals. It's just one of the funniest things. The first book, I thought it was also interesting that the couple was already married.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you see in a lot of romance books. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, you know, so it's a little more common in historicals. And, you know, the trope is called, you know, marriage in trouble. And it's a little easier to pull off, I think, in historicals because there were societal and legal reasons why people couldn't easily get divorced, you know, a century ago or, you know, 2 centuries ago. So so you do tend to see that trope more in historicals. For this book, the reason I had them be married is because sort of the whole point of the book club, as it was originally envisioned by the founder, was to help repair relationships for men who've done their darndest to screw them up. And so as I originally imagined it, the first one would be about the guys, putting the lessons of the manuals to work, saving a relationship that was really falling apart. So, but it's fun because I think the cool thing about A Marriage in Trouble trope is that you jump right in from page one into just, you know, the emotional pool. Like there's all this existing, you know, emotion between them. And so, you know, right from the start, you're just dealing with a lot of heavy, you know, intense emotion between the two of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I had seen one that I haven't read one that had that. I was really surprised when I read that. It leads me to another question though, Alisha. I'm going to start with you. When you wrote The Right Swipe, did you know going in it was going to be a series?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I pitched it as a series. I think there's something really fun about having interconnected stories a little bit. I think it, you know, it's fun for the readers. I think it's fun for the authors to be able to revisit characters and, you know, pull them back all together in whatever, you know, way I can. So yeah, I knew like from the very beginning, I was like, this is going to be like a 3-book series. I know the girls, the heroes were a little more opaque, but you know, it was as it usually is for me. But the heroine of the first book and the heroine of the last book are actually spun off from my Forbidden Heart series. So they were already sort of secondary characters in that.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So now there is a third one then in the Modern Romance series. Is that correct?
Yes. It's
when
coming
will that be?
It'll be out in February of 2021. It's called First Comes Like. And it's about a influencer who is catfished by someone, you know, and she confronts the guy. He doesn't know who she is, never seen her before. Somebody used his face. But then it all sort of works its way out. So it's a catfish with a happily ever after.
That sounds awesome. That's really good.
That does sound interesting. I'm making a note on it. I haven't seen it on Goodreads. I haven't seen it on Goodreads yet, so I'll make a note.
Please.
And now, Lyssa Kay, you have your third one. We said is already coming out. Is there going to be a fourth?
Yeah, in fact, I just did a surprise cover reveal today of the fourth book. It'll be out in June. Yep. Called Isn't It Romantic? And it is about finally the Russian. There's there's a running character all throughout these books. And I never intended to write his book. Probably, which is clear when you read the first one, that he's kind of comic relief.
He really is.
He's got some digestive issues. And but people were asking for it, and I'm like, you know, I actually could write his book. And so yes, the Russians book will be out in June. It's called Isn't It Romantic? Yeah.
Okay, great. Now tell us about the one that you have coming out in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so that one's called Crazy Stupid Romance. I actually remembered to have copies of my books for this. That's a miracle for me.
Right.
Yeah, so that follows characters that you meet in book 2 in Undercover Romance, and it's about a woman who owns a cat cafe. I don't know if you've ever been to a cat cafe. You know, it's like a coffee shop where you can also adopt a kitten. It's like the best concept ever. And so she owns a cat cafe, and a woman comes in and claims to be her long lost sister. And she needs some help dealing with finding out if this woman's for real. So she turns to who is this man who is her best friend, named Noah Logan. So he's the hero of this book. He's a computer security expert, former hacktivist from his teenage years. And so together they figure out who these people are who claim to be her long lost father and sister. And it's a friends to lovers, which was fun. I've never written that before, and so that was fun to write.
Great. Alisha, we've got, I don't know if you can see these questions in the chat thing. We've got several questions that people emailed me beforehand, but one was, how do you said something about the heroes being more difficult for you to write, and one of the questions was, how do you get into that space to be a guy, to write what guys think, because who knows what they're thinking, and how do you do that? And then she also wanted to know if you had any personal experience with, in the first book, in The Right Swipe, the heroine had some abusive relationships in the past, and so she wanted to know if there was any personal experience that you had dealt with from that before.
Yeah, sure. So heroes, like for me, they're opaque just because I think I I tend to identify more with women. Like most of my friends are women, you know,
Right.
and just I feel comfortable sort of in that space. But you know, I think in my head I'm just like, okay, well, they're people, and so I'm gonna write people. And so, you know, it's just like writing any other character, you know, you kind of have to get in the space of like, well, what's their motivation? What's their goal? What's their backstory like? How is that affecting them? Um, and I love to people watch. Like that's my favorite thing in the world. So I just kind of spend a lot of time, you know, with people, and some of them happen to be girls. So I think that's it. But I think it is like, I remember when I was writing Hate to Want You, which is, you know, the first in my last series, and it's the first book I ever wrote that starts with the hero, like in his point of view. And I must have written and rewritten that opening scene like 10 million times because I was like, it's not right, it's not right. And finally realized what it was. I was like, oh, well, this is why it's like different from every other book I've written. So, you know, I just kind of get back into that zone and do it. And as for the right swipe, yeah, I think most of my books, you know, in one way or another touch on something, you know, personal that's in my life or that has affected me. And I think I'm, you know, I keep my sort of eyes and ears open, but a lot of the things, you know, are stuff from you know, little pieces of me here and there. So it may not be all of me, but you know, everything's got like a little hint of me in it.
Right. Lyssa Kay, how about you? How do you get into writing from a male perspective?
So I think a lot of it is because I've been married for 20 years to a sports journalist. And so I don't know what it is that, so I'm just sort of inundated all the time with like, you know, I'm just around men all the time. I don't know. But I think I do say that most of the insults that these guys throw around in my books come straight from my husband's mouth, things that I've heard him say to like his reporters over the phone or something, you know. But you know, like Alisha said, I mean, it's part of it is just simply trying to step back and view the world through the lens of someone whose glasses you've never worn before, and how do you walk around in the world differently, you know, in their glasses, and it is different. You know, I think it's particularly different when I think a man is trying to write the female point of view, the woman's point of view, and they don't know how we navigate the world in such a different way. But there are things that, you know, are different from the male point of view as well. But one thing I've tried to do though in my books is to actually sort of turn that concept on its head of that necessarily that, you know, men have to see the world differently. And I'm trying to tear down that concept. And some of the guys get it right away. Some of these guys, you know, absolutely call each other out on, you know, that joke was never funny. For example, if someone tells a joke that seems sexist, you know, and that, you know, that joke has never been funny. That joke was not funny in the 50s. You just thought it was because you didn't care that women weren't laughing then, you know. And some of the other guys have a lot of work to do. And so that's, I purposely tackle that issue of that you know, the male point of view is different, you know, in the world.
Now, you said your husband is a sports journalist. You were a journalist before, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I was. Yeah, that's how we met, actually. We worked at a newspaper at a time when there were actually a lot of people working at newspapers, and I worked the night cops beat, and he worked sports. So I would get there for the evening shift, and there would be no desks left. All the computers had been taken. There were actually that many reporters at the paper at that time. So I always end up having to steal a computer in sports. And so I ended up married because of it.
Because there were no spare computers. Oh my. So now how long did you do that, and at what point did you, or have you hung it up, I guess, to write full time? Yeah,
I fully now. I'm not, you know, I've left the industry, but I did it for almost, you know, about 18 years. I was a reporter, a lot of that time full-time in a newspaper, some of it freelance. Yeah, but it was, you know, it was my first, you know, I loved it. I absolutely loved being a journalist.
And Alisha, you are an attorney.
I am.
Is that correct?
Yes, I
And
am.
do you still do that, or have you hung it up to write full time, or can
I
we call
work.
you for legal advice? Or...
You shouldn't want to call. So I'm a tax attorney, so you probably don't
Oh,
want to call
okay.
me for legal advice.
No,
If you're calling
no.
me for legal advice, you're in some trouble already, probably. But I'm mostly part-time now, and you know, I really loved it. Like I didn't love working at a firm, so I'm glad I gave that up. It was really hectic and
Right.
stressful and pretty miserable existence actually. But so I, tell like law school grads, like if you can do anything else, don't work at a firm. Or just don't go. I mean, one or the other. It is great when you can kind of exercise sort of both sides of your brain, and that's what I really liked about it, is that I could write and I could do this, and writing was sort of an escape from this, and when I got too stressed out from this, I could go back to sort of law.
Right.
So that is what I love about it. I mean, it's amazing, like how many cool careers romance authors have had, like the breadth of sort of experience we all pull from. I love hearing what people have done,
It is
not
interesting.
just before, concurrent or whatever.
Yeah, you don't see a lot that say, I started off to be a romance writer, and that's what I did, what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I just started doing it. There's always some other, they sort of fell into it, I guess. Did you always know that you wanted to write, even when you were in law school or high school?
Yeah. I mean, I was writing in law school. Like I started reading romance, I think, when I was like 12 or something like that. Like I was very young. I think a lot of us start pretty young.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a romance writer, but I also had to eat. So
Right.
let me take care of the eating part of this, and then I'll figure out what else I can do. So that was sort of my track. But I knew I was like, this is my favorite thing in the world. I just love it.
Yeah.
In this industry and in this, the publishing community in general. And I do love it. Like there's a lot of stress and a lot of sort of anxiety once everyone thinks like once you're published, everything's set, and that's not nearly the case at all. So if only, you sort of have to still deal with that, but I do love it.
So you've got the third book coming out, and I guess is it done as far as you're concerned?
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, still some more steps to go through with the publishing company.
Right, all the technical stuff has to happen.
Yeah, they have
to.
So
do you have 4 more books in your head that you're trying to get on paper, or you sit down every day trying to think of something? Or
basically, I've been sending my agent like ideas, like, well, what about this? Because I do have so many ideas, but like the fun part is the ideas, and then the kind of hard part is the actually making it into a book-shaped object, that's harder. So
one author, I read one author that was saying that she has these characters that talk to her, and finally she just has to sit down and say, okay, fine, I will write what you're saying to me, and start typing it in. And I wonder, is that the case with y'all as well? Do you kind of have that same idea that these people are telling you what to write? Not that you have multiple personalities. But,
I think for me, like usually the characters come first. So I usually have like someone or something, like a career, even like something like this. And it's not unusual for me to pick up the phone with like my agent or something and be like, hear me out. What about like if like the Partridge Family, just like, wait. Like, what if they were in, just like, hang on. So yeah, it's sometimes it can be a little wild, and then somebody has to kind of rein it in and be like, let's focus. Let's focus on
Partridge Family in a romance novel. I want to see it. I'm not gonna lie.
I do too. Like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Right?
Yeah,
you got me.
That. So, Lyssa Kay, what about yours? You've got this book that's about to come out, one in February. I'm guessing is mostly written.
June, yeah.
June,
so I'm in the edits of it right now. Yep. So
do you have other characters now that are waiting in line to get their own book written?
Yeah. So there will be 2 more books after the Russians book. So I'll start writing that 5th book in November. Start throwing together the first draft of that. I hate the first draft process. That's the worst part for me. And I love revisions. I love edits, but first draft is hard. So that I know, I always kind of have an idea. I always know who the characters are going to be, but not necessarily where the story's going to go yet. And, you know, and even it changes, I think, even as you're writing, you know, the book that's coming out October 27th, the Crazy Stupid Romance, changed as I was mid-writing. I actually, you know, shot an email off to my editor, and I'm like, okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I think I'm going to have this not just, you know, something's going to happen in this book, you know, what do you think about this? And she's like, yeah, I mean, if yeah, absolutely, do it, you know. So it's, you know, surprising how, like, even when you start writing, you think it's going to be one thing, and then it, you know, kind of evolves and changes, you know, as you're drafting. So so I do, like Alisha said, I tend to start with character. Character ideas come to me before I even put them into a plot. And in fact, the second book, writing that book almost killed me, Undercover Romance. I mean, you know, who writes about, you know, the sexual harassment in the context of a rom-com? You know, it was very, very hard to try to balance that. But I was struggling so much to come up with a plot that matched the personalities of the two characters, because they were the primary, secondary characters in the first book, and they just sort of left off the page. And so I needed a big plot for them. And I literally was woke up the day after Thanksgiving, and my dog woke me up early, you know, had to let it. And so I turned the TV on, and it was like an advertisement for that Bobby Flay show, Beat Bobby Flay, or whatever it's called. I can't think what it's called. And I was like, professional chef, Liv works for a professional chef. And I mean, just boom, immediately I'm like, I know exactly what this book is about now. And so it's odd how that happens, you know, that these, you know, how you find these, I try to fit the characters into a plot that sort of rises to their personalities and their, you know, who they are.
Because that does tackle some pretty serious issue, obviously.
Yes.
And Brad, hi Brad. Brad wants to know if you can tell us some of your favorite romances, and are there any pitfalls that you work overtime to avoid?
Who want to have Alisha? Start with me. Okay.
We'll start with you.
Okay. So some of my favorite romances. Well, my current, I have two favorite authors that I'm just sort of obsessed with right now, and one is Alexa Martin, and she writes a series about. I mean, I guess you could say it's, you know, she follows a group of football players, but they're told from the perspective of the heroine. So. But her books are just, they're so honest from the heroine's point of view, that you just really feel like when you're a woman reading her books that you're like, yep, she has been right in my head. I don't know how it happened, but, you know, so I love Alexa Martin right now. And I also love an author, I'm actually going to be appearing with her next week, named Cara Bastone, who just started publishing, her first book just came out a few months ago. And she's so good. There's just something very, again, she really seems to celebrate people's lives in a way that it just really resonated with me. And I think in terms of pitfalls as an author, you know, there's the standard pitfall, you know, that any writer faces, and that is, you know, avoiding, you know, becoming cliched. You know, how do you take stories that have been told really 1,000 times and still make them fresh and still make them, you know, that people still want to read. But I think that's the beauty of romance, though, is that you know, it gets labeled sometimes wrongly as you know, as because they always have a happy ending, that somehow that's predictable, which is ridiculous, because what's amazing about romance is the journey that the characters take to that happy ending. And that's what keeps people coming back over and over. And so if you think about it, when people pick up a romance and decide to buy it, they know how that book's going to end already, right? They know that these people are going to end up together, but they buy it anyway because it's the journey that they're interested in. And so I think that the pitfalls that you can fall into are keeping that journey honest and fresh and relevant.
Alisha, tell us about your favorite romance authors and how you, what pitfalls you try to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so many. Where do we
Yeah.
start? I some of
I'm
my,
making notes as y'all tell me. If you
yeah,
just,
please
so.
do. Some of my favorite, I think, older romance authors, ones I grew up, kind of reading, were like Jane Ann Krantz and Lisa Kleypas. I read all the Judith McNaughts and things like that. So I love sort of that older, bastion
Yeah.
of romance canon. But I also really love, I mean, more recently, like Sonali Dev has had some great books. She has a new Jane Austen retelling series, and the first one's called Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, and I just loved it. It was very fresh and new. Also, Pride and Prejudice, oddly enough, is Aisha at Last by Uzma Jalaluddin, who I adored that book. And I love Courtney Milan's historicals and contemporaries as well. But during quarantine, I think the books that have really sort of I've reread were Nalini Singh's the Psy Changeling series, and it's paranormal, and it is amazing. Like just some of the greatest, best world building I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Any kind of sci-fi, urban fantasy, romance, PNR that I've ever seen. So I love those. And they really are, you talk about how people criticize it for knowing the ending, and I think that's absolutely true, but there's no genre that you don't know the ending in. In murder mystery, there's going to be a deadline, someone's going to solve it. That it's going to be science fiction, so these are genre markers. This is just part of, what makes it what it is. It's not necessarily knowing the ending. It's just having the certainty that you're picking up what you want to pick up. That's all.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, the pitfall is just to make sure that, when people walk away from the book, they're kind of, the point I think for me of romance is to sort of leave you with a sense of hope. Like, like things will get better. Like you'll get what you want, you'll get the things that you say you want and you should get, and so I want people to walk away from that, and I want it to be a form of escapism for them, because they've really saved my life. And a lot of times, when I'm really down and out, I read a book and I feel better. So I want them to walk away with that. And but at the same time, I want it grounded sort of in a sense of reality. So it feels like it's contemporary romance. So it should reflect, our world sort of as it is. And so when they open it, I want them to feel like, oh, I'm stepping into the world that I already know. Like this is the world, but also the world's getting better, and, we're getting better at it. So.
Okay, speaking of the world getting better, we were talking earlier about, okay, so your book, Girl Gone Viral, the main character sitting there minding her own business, and there's someone next to her that starts tweeting about what she thinks is happening at the table next to her. It is in fact not at all what's happening. And the whole world goes nuts and wants to know what's going on, and this poor woman has to go into hiding. So you, in fact, went viral made a tweet, just a very off-the-cuff tweet. Do you know what I'm talking about, Lyssa Kay? So tell us about this tweet. And again, I tell everyone here, I'm not laughing at her pain, but it is really, really funny.
It's ridiculous.
So you're going to tell us about how you went viral.
Yeah,
your book.
It's super ridiculous. It was back in February, and keep in mind, I'd already written Girl Gone Viral. Like it had been written, it was in the can, I couldn't touch it anymore. And I tweeted, I went on a first date with this guy, and it was one of those things where I was like, it wasn't a great date in general, but like one thing that I thought was really funny was that he came back to the table with cake pops. We were at a Starbucks. He came back with 2 cake pops, and then I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like, I'm not really feeling him, but it's sweet that he had a cake pop. And then he ate both of them. Well, this is like emblematic of the whole date. So it's okay. It's okay. I thought it was funny too. We're like sitting there like, and she's right. Valentine's cake pops, so they had little hearts on them too, so it made it. What are you doing?
Thanks.
The next day, I tweeted what happened, like as it was, and I just like, I was like, so he's like clearly a monster, right? Like just as like a off the cuff joke, and people like at first I thought it was like 100 people laugh, like just
right.
Yeah, and it. And at first people were like, yeah, he's a monster. Like, this is a red flag, like joking with me. And I'm like, yeah, haha.
Like, he is a monster for doing that. It's not a joke. Okay. Yes.
It's a joke. And so, but then people came in and they were like, you're clearly a gold digger. Like,
Yeah.
you're so rich. I was like, what is happening? And then it went to like a really dark place where people,
The men's rights people, right?
the
Like
men's rights activists moved in and decided this was going to be their cause of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And so like went after me like on every platform I had, like my emails, my website, like, you know, they were sending like, you know, like the DOS, whatever, to my website to crash it. Like they were doing all kinds of things. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is nonsense. Like this is crazy. And part of it was like, usually, you know, when I go live, like if I go viral somewhere on Twitter or something like that, it's just like stays on Twitter. Like nobody ever, you know, like whatever, I unmute it, I move on with my life. I don't really pay attention to it anymore. But this was like, you know, it was on like Fox News, it was on Post, it was on Good Morning America, like my face, Michael Strahan's talking about my dates, like it was crazy. And I was just sitting there for like a month, like what the heck? And the only thing I think that knocked it out was sadly like COVID. A month.
you would still be talking about those cake pots of pops if we had not had a pandemic.
For a month.
And the things people said to you, the things people tweeted to you, I mean, I thought, people can read that. Do they know people can see that they did that? And obviously they don't because they're anonymous and so it doesn't matter, but it's fascinating.
It's crazy. And I reported so many, nothing happened.
Yeah.
So many of them were like legitimately threatening. And I was a little scared because I was like, it was just a joke.
Yeah.
That was madness.
It was madness. It was like
it really was.
And somebody said to me, like, I was reading some other book and it was about this guy going viral for like something else. And I was just like, the person was reading, I was like, no one would go really viral for that. And I was like, let me tell you. The most ridiculous things can go viral. So
It's really, it just brings out just the worst in people. I mean, like I said, it was just truly fascinating to follow, and it wasn't happening to me. So, but I just thought, I can't believe people were saying it.
Yeah. In the beginning, I was just like, this is bizarre. It's going to blow over in like a couple of days.
Right.
And then it didn't. And then I was like, what do I do now? Because
Right.
I can't shut everything down, indefinitely. And nobody seems tired of this yet. And it's like there were YouTube videos made about me. Like there were.
Oh my God.
It kind of got out of control.
It did.
So, and like you said, unfortunately, COVID, the world had to come to an end for people to stop talking about it. So you're writing this other book. Who is talking? Are either of you mentioning this whole COVID business in your books? Are you just pretending it's not happening as you write? I mean, are your characters, is it just not happening to them? They don't know anything about it? Lyssa Kay, how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, no, it has not shown up in my, in my series yet, largely because the way that I've structured the series, they exist on the same time, one right after the other. So where one ends, the next one picks right back up, like within just a couple of, in one case, it's just a month later and the other, So, so no, I have not introduced COVID at all into what I've written. I'm not opposed to it at some point, acknowledging, when the world stood still for this, and the tragedy of it. But I haven't gone there yet.
Yeah. Alisha, are any of yours going to include that?
Yeah, it was really challenging to sort of write this book during the pandemic because you don't know it's coming out in February. I don't know what the world's going to look like then. And I didn't know what it would look like tomorrow or, the next day. So I think, for me, what I did was I just kind of wrote it because mine were kind of spaced a little further apart. So there was like a year in between, or 6 months to a year in between each one. So I just kind of made it into a slightly post-COVID world where, the psychological effects might still be felt, but I don't really talk about it in the book. But I think it's hard not to talk about people being close to each other, For me, at least, it was hard to talk about without at least some kind of nod to it. And that character who as I said, was a spin-off character, so her backstory was already kind of set. Her family's full of doctors, and I was like, well, how do I
Oh yeah.
not mention something? So I decided to go on more of the psychological aspect than like, there was this huge illness and everyone kind of, the world was still for a year or so. So I just took it in a slightly different direction. But it was, Girl Gone Viral, it released during the pandemic, like it released in April. And so one thing that I thought was, it was kind of the perfect, it ended up being a good quarantine book because they're literally in the middle of nowhere by themselves for the majority of their book. And she really loves baking. She's got a sourdough starter. And so
that's perfect.
It's a quarantine book without even trying.
Yeah, they were ready for it. Like, I don't know. So, okay, so Lyssa Kay, your website has, so the Romance Book Club, again, for those of you who haven't read the book, it's a group of guys who read these during a book club. And so you have a list of romance book club suggestions, is that correct?
Yeah. And actually I actually intended to update that on a regular basis, and I have such good intentions with my website, and then I never follow through. But yeah, I get asked a lot about, where should, if a guy wants to start reading romance novels, what's a good, sort of starting point. And so I do have some recommendations, for men to get started, but also what is it that they're, what are they looking for, when they want to start reading the books. But for me, one of the really, really big things is for some reason this is controversial and bizarre. I don't know why, but the idea that consent is somehow ruins the moment. That was a bit of a conversation, following and during some of the most egregious of the Me Too revelations, and the idea that seeking active, enthusiastic consent was somehow unsexy. And so one of the things that I always that I include in my recommendations for sort of romance starter kit are books that really, really profile what consent looks like and sounds like, which is odd that we would have to do that. But but to me, it's important that whatever I recommend really, really shows that. And so, I think that most books that have been published in the past few years are great. Alisha, in fact, I think it would be a great recommendation for any of her books, would be a great starting point for anyone who wants to, get started in romance, and for what consent looks like and how it does not in any way just, diminish a moment. But I also think that there are, sometimes if men just kind of want to dip their toe into the, romance, I have recommendations for, romantic suspense novels, that, still, kind of balance the line between thrillers and romance. And so I always recommend Laura Griffin as a good starting point for romance novels. I recommend Alexa Martin a lot. For one thing, because I feel like that the point of view from the heroines in her books, as I said before, one of the reasons I'm obsessed with her writing is because I feel like she's been in my head. Like I just feel like she celebrates women's lives, inner lives in such a wonderful way that I would love for men to read that. I want them to read that point of view and see what the world looks like, from that lens. And so those are always books that I recommend.
We've got a couple of guys.
One of the things I love. What's that? I'm sorry. What?
We've got a couple of guys in the session right now, and I know a couple of them, and I'm just interested to know what you would tell them to read.
Yeah, no, I
want to hear about it at work, Brad and Mark. After y'all read them, I want to know what you think about them.
Yeah, I think, but and if they like to laugh, thank God there's, rom-com has made such a strong resurgence in the past few years.
Yeah,
there's been so many good books.
And these days you need something to laugh at.
Yeah, very much.
You need all the fun books to escape what's going on in the world. So it's 10 after, and we've had a couple of people typing questions. I want to give everyone a chance to do that now. while you're typing one in, I've got one other one that someone emailed me and said, wanted to know what is your funniest typo? And I don't know if they meant which one made it out to publication or which one your editor called and said, oh my God, I can't believe you put this in here. So what is your funniest typo?
Well, I just had one in the book I just turned in. It was supposed to say first time they had slept in the same bed, and instead I wrote the same body. And I'm like, well, that's a completely different book. That's a whole different genre. Like that's not even, you know, but I didn't catch it at first. And I'm like, whoa, what did I write there? So that was a fun, but anytime the word public, you have to catch
Yeah.
that one, you know. Yeah. Because that can just that one letter that goes missing, and it's like a completely different meaning, you know, and spell check doesn't catch it. So
it doesn't.
I think for me, it's usually like some kind of embarrassing continuity error where like, you know, it takes a while. So I had one where a couple of years ago where the heroine it was like an intimate scene and the heroine was wearing pants, and then suddenly she was wearing a skirt, and then like she puts her pants on again at the end. What is she wearing? Like what kind of
very interesting outfit.
There's so much to keep track of. Like,
Layers.
Clothes are the last thing. I'm like, block it. It's like a fight scene. It's so annoying.
Yeah. No, I actually in copy edits for one of my last books, the copy editor, I mean, God bless copy editors who, you know, oh my gosh. But she pointed out, she's like, you know, I just want to say he hasn't actually taken his pants off yet. I'm like, oh, I thought it was implied, but okay, I will write it there. This actually happened.
Yeah, clothes are very complicated sometimes.
They are.
Figure it out.
But and it's so funny because copy editors' comments are just so like bland, like they're just, you know, just to the point, you know. That it makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, they're very matter of fact, even about
they
things.
Are.
I'm giggling like a 13-year-old, and
Same.
Are you sure you meant this? Like,
yeah.
So, okay, do you have someone that you get to read your stuff, someone that you know personally that you get to read it first, and they say, wow, that's amazing, or please burn this and try again? I mean, who is that person for either of you?
I have like I have so many beta readers that it sort of goes through before, you know, anybody or before even the copy editor sees it.
Oh yeah.
Like I have some who just like read for something specific where I'm like, how I did on this, like, you know, did I handle this subject well, or did I handle this, you know, aspect like good in your opinion or whatever. And some just read it for enjoyment, like, did it suck? Like, did it go against the wall? Like, do you hate it? And so I have sort of like a wide ring of people where I'm like, I'm going to send it to this one for copy edits, or like before copy edits, one before this, and yeah. So I have a good, luckily stable of people who are happy to, you know, pre-read it. So I'm very lucky.
Great.
Yeah.
Lyssa Kay, how about you?
Yeah, I've got a couple of you know, critique partners that, you know, we swap stuff all the time, who are, you know, familiar with my voice and what I, you know, with my characters, and so they will read scenes for me, but they're also like, if there's very specific scenes that about subjects that I've had to research, I will often have whoever I interviewed, you know, read that scene and be like, did I get this right? You know, what did I get wrong here? But truly the first person or the first people that read my book from beginning to end straight through are usually my agent and editor.
Oh wow.
Like I don't send it out to beta readers before I turn it into them. But after that, yeah, I will send it around to other folks to get, you know, their opinions.
Yeah. Okay, so again, we've got about 15 minutes. If anyone has any questions they want to send over here in the chat. Yeah, that's Sarah telling us we have 15 minutes. So there you go. And someone else just commented that they Googled Alisha Rai and it autofilled cake pops. I don't know.
Oh no!
So,
I'm so sorry.
I know.
My lasting legacy.
You need to write.
I was gonna say,
but you're gonna have to write like a book just about the cake.
about that, just about the cake topics
to
today.
happen. Like,
Yeah.
just lean into it at this
Hold on,
point.
put it on this one, so we gotta come up
Right.
with another viral title.
It's a whole other viral title. Yeah. I think they might be onto something. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I did have one other question that someone sent, and it's is there a lesson or message in your book that you want to convey to your readers? Lyssa Kay, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think I often return to the theme of forgiveness. I think is one that I almost always go back to, but not just forgiving other people, but forgiving ourselves for things that, we think we've done wrong, or, things we've screwed up in the past, or, but I think the biggest one, and Alisha touched on this before, is that I always want my readers to walk away with a sense of hopefulness,
Mm-hmm.
that, about, and not even just about love, but hopefulness about themselves, and about that they have found some kind of inspiration in overcoming an obstacle, or that, that it's made them feel better about something that they've been going through in their life. But I would say that forgiveness is a very common theme in what I write.
Okay. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think each of my books has a slightly maybe different overall message in it. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think hope is a big part of it, and I think that's sort of a constant recurring theme for a lot of romance novels. One thing, like in Girl Gone Viral, something that the heroine kind of says, over and over, is that happiness is a radical act. Like, that's sort of her thing, because she's had to deal with some stuff where deal with people who didn't really want her to be happy, or
right,
happiness. And so for her, like, to be happy is pretty subversive. And I do think that that's sort of like a common theme in my books, is
Mm-hmm.
that I saw, I think it was Johnny's son, he does like a little alien character on Twitter. It's very cute. But he did a TED talk about how actually it's harder to write optimistic and happy things, because everyone in the world is telling you that it's unrealistic or
right,
unlikely. So it's easier to kind of give in to cynicism and despair.
Mm-hmm.
And after I saw that, I was like, oh, that's actually very true. Like, it is in a lot of ways. I mean, if I could kill everybody at the end of these books, it would be a lot easier. I mean, it would
Right.
solve everything. But I can't do that. And so it is harder to like come up with a way where everybody is happy. And I think in real life, that's true too. It's harder to find happiness. And especially since COVID hit, and it's become harder and harder, I think, for everybody. It's a great, like, huge time of isolation, I think, for everybody, and stress and loneliness. So
yeah,
if I can find happiness for my characters, I think it gives a sense of hope that we can find it in real life too. And I know I've been looking, I mean, anything that I do where I'm like, wow, this made me happy, this is great, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, wow, what a great day. Like, I went through amazing.
right.
We're all seeking out like whatever little tiny pieces of happiness we can find right now. So yeah, I think that's sort of my overall, like, maybe message.
Right.
It's there. I know it doesn't, like, these, when you're sad or when you're despairing, like, that doesn't really define you. Those are just moments in your life.
Right.
All sorts of moments in your life.
So have you ever considered writing a different, one of the subgenres, I guess, romance, like a sci-fi or thriller, or what, historical maybe? Have you ever considered writing a genre like that, or have you written one of those?
I've written a couple of paranormals, and like way back when I wrote sci-fi-ish, like dystopian with zombies, and I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I was the one who loved it, so I couldn't. Critics loved it.
Yeah.
It was not a big commercial hit, unfortunately. But if I could go back to, like, I love sci-fi. I think I love futuristic stuff. I love Walking Dead. That was like one of my favorite shows for a long time.
Right.
If I could go back to writing something like, something like that, I'd be happy to. Like, in a minute, I'd do it. But it's pretty intense. Like, I love contemporary too. I'm happy to be in this genre.
Right.
When I do think about, like, okay, well, what could I stretch into? That's usually what I think of. Like, something like end of the world-ish. That would be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. What's the cake? Is there something, another genre that you would write, or have you written another genre?
I would love to write romantic suspense someday. I do. I read it. I love it. And as much as I would love to be able to write historicals, but I don't know if I have it in me, you know, if I could do that. But I love to read them. And so I think if that's something I could get into, I would love to. But I'm pretty happy with contemporary right now. It feels it's my happy place right now. And so I want to give other people a happy place too. So
it's working for you. It's working for you. So, okay, we do have a question, and it's, what is the most romantic thing that one of your characters has done? And we can go ahead and start with you. What's that?
Oh, I think that one of the most romantic things that one of my characters has ever done, you know, I think it's funny because I didn't consider this to be all that romantic, but I get a lot of messages about a particular scene in the first book, Romance Book Club, where the character takes Gavin takes his wife Thea out on a date, and they go to a craft store, and because she loves washi tape. You know what washi tape is? It's that like decorative tape for like, you know, I'm like a planner geek, so I've got tons of it. And so she loves that stuff. So that's where they go on their date, is he takes her to this like mega superstore that has like an entire aisle full of washi tape. And you know, people email me and they're like, oh my God, I need someone who's going to take me to a craft store you know, on a date. And so, but I think the reason it's just because he knows his wife so well that he knows that would, you know, be important to her, and, you know, and so I think that probably is the simplest but most romantic thing that I think one of my characters
knows that washi tape is going to go a lot further than flowers for some people, and so and you have to know. It's an important part. So Alisha, what's the most romantic thing one of your characters has done?
You know, I didn't realize it was going to be such a hit when I wrote it, but one thing that I found out that really resonated with readers was in The Right Swipe, there's a part where the hero, you know, the heroine is working, like she's preparing for this merger acquisition sort of thing, and she's been working night and day, and so every day he sends her in her office like a you know, like a catered meal or like something like that. He tries like a different style every day. So it's like Chinese one day, and it's, you know, salads the next day, it's pizza the next day, and after a while I was like, oh, I see why that resonates with people, because it's like, it's really cool that, you know, he's allowing, like, you know, he's giving her the tools so that she can get her job done in a really easy way. And I do think, like, when I think back to like the most romantic things people have, you know, like anyone's done for me, it's always something like that, where it's something small, where it's like, oh, you made me coffee, like that's great. I don't have to get up or like, oh, you know, you made dinner tonight, that's fantastic, like thanks. Like, you know, it's those sort of like small moments that I think are just you know, like there's grand sort of, you know, gestures and things like that, and those are great and can be very romantic. But I think when it comes to sort of like a lasting relationship, like these little moments are just as romantic and wonderful.
Yeah, it is the little thing.
It's a little thing. It's always the little thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you share your props? No? Okay, well.
You've got like a new standard now for like dating. Like, okay, we need to talk about cake pops first and foremost.
Yes. And so when I was telling my husband about that, because it was just so funny, and not funny at the same time, but fascinating to me. And he said, I can't believe that man would share the cake pops. I mean, that's just, who wouldn't do that? And then he also pointed out that cake pops are really good and you don't want to share them, and so it'd be a hard call. And I thought, well,
the thing is, when I tell the story now, like invariably, like I'll be like, oh yeah, and so he didn't share his cake pops, and I'll move on to the next part, and they'll go, wait.
Yeah. You come back to the table with 2 cake pops. You're 2 people.
You're on a date.
And math is not that hard. It isn't. I don't.
It is a good litmus test, though, let me tell you.
Yes, I mean, it's like there's got to be a standard somewhere. I mean, it's a low bar.
It's a low bar.
But there's something like,
low bar.
I mean, God.
Oh gosh, so we've got 5 minutes left, and I have a few more questions if anybody wants to ask anything. Is there anything else that either of you would like to share with us, or? tell our group, run out and buy your book. Is that it? Okay, so you can go.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I should make that plug. So Wordsworth Book Company is our official book, the official bookseller of the Six Bridges Book Festival. So you can go to their website and buy the book. I don't know, did y'all get the book plates to sign to put in your books? I don't know if y'all got those or not. So if you sent those back, then they'll put one of the plates in the book for people that purchase them.
Great.
And because usually this is the point where we'd be sending people out into the hallway so you can sign their books and say nice things to you and all that. And it's such a fun part. So
it is. So I was watching the Great British Bake Off yesterday, like the new version, and they're doing it in COVID times. Like they're basically having everybody quarantine there, and then they're keeping them there for the full 7 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Anything. And I started crying. So touched by this. And I think what it is it's so amazing, like the ways that we're finding to like do the things we love and stuff like this, like, being able to do these virtual events, signing book plates to send back.
Right.
I mean, I really think it's amazing how humanity sort of, tries to adapt to like, do the things we love to do still. It's really, like, it's touching. So I was a little hormonal too, but it was also really touching.
It is great because this festival was supposed to be in April, and all this was breaking out at the time, and we're like, oh, we have to cancel it. That's great, and now here but we finally got to do it, so that's the good news. And y'all both got to come back, which is even the better news.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. I mean, it is great that we've been able to do that and go to the different things. And actually, there was one that I wanted to see Jasmine Guillory, and I said, oh, I'm going to go to the Decatur Book Festival because I can online, and there was Alisha moderating that session, so I was like, I know her. But it is nice because you can go doing things now that you couldn't have before.
Right.
So it's kind of got an upside, I guess.
It does.
It's been good for libraries because libraries have been able to do these panels that they wouldn't normally be able to bring in authors for, and
And y'all both got to attend and not have to fly, and you could even be in your pajamas right now, and we wouldn't know if you no way of knowing. And I was telling the panelists earlier, yes, this is my the drawers. I'm in the floor in my kitchen because we moved yesterday, and my new house has furniture, but no old house has internet and no furniture, and so. I would prefer to be at the library right now doing this session with y'all live for several reasons, but this is one of them because we could all be together and not sitting on the floor. But anyway, ladies, I'm so
nosy though. I love to see like people's houses, so I'm like, what's going on in your
background?
It is,
it's kind of fun, yeah.
I don't mind this.
The new place is really nice, but this one is not so much exciting anymore. So anyway, but ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. It's been so much. And I hope that everyone will go out and buy a book that started at the beginning of the series, because it's always better to read the first book first, in my opinion.
Well, thanks
always.
For having us.
And they're great. So thank y'all so much. And thank you everyone for attending, and go to Wordsworth and buy the books. And Sarah, is that all we need to do? I don't know what the official ending is here, so.
Oh, she said yes.
Yes. Okay, yes. Okay. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
A lot of fun. Bye. See you guys later.